Okay, hello. Today I'm going to be doing a walkthrough for this case, the First Lady of Brazilian Botany by Lara Holding Jones. This was the final qualification round for the UK kind of championships. And in a first for me, this is the first time I've solved a case in the time and got it all right. So this will be the first time I'm doing a walkthrough where basically I'm going to just pretty much try and replicate exactly the solutions I did yesterday in the case because they obviously worked for me. It'll be a little bit tidier because I've done my data setup and so on, just so this is nice and efficient. But yeah, really fun case. I'm going to say a little bit about what information we were given beforehand. So we had some warning that it was going to be a map case, and then there was a little video that came out. And I tried to keep to the 5 minutes that would happen in the real case to do some preparation. So in that video, we basically got a sight of this map, and you could see that there were kind of peas representing paths and these flowers representing flowers, and that was all we were kind of told. I did have a go at trying to do some prep work, which I'll show you here, although in the end actually the work I did wasn't needed. I assumed that it would be useful to, so this I just quickly made up by filling it with peas and then removing some and adding some flowers, and then I played around with the maze lambda to I assumed we might have to work out paths between different flowers, and so I played around with that for a couple of minutes, got something I thought, oh yes, I think that will work, and then actually didn't end up using the maze lambda at all. So sometimes, but it was still, I think, helpful to think through what the case might be using instead. I know that Hayden has already done a walkthrough. Hayden, congratulations, he was the fastest on the day, beat me by a good kind of over 5 minutes. So either the things I noticed during the kind of follow-up work where I could have improved, don't think I would have got a little closer, but says he wouldn't have beaten Hayden's time. So yeah, and I've deliberately not watched his walkthrough, which I know has already been published, just because I like to do my own first and then look what other people did. Anyway, I've chatted more than enough. It's 2 minutes. Let's get going. So level one, actually the first thing that slowed me down, I should say, you may have noticed I have this little setup where I can build a data table nice and quickly. I've got a bit of macro that when I run it on a question, it creates this. But it didn't work yesterday, and that's because in the UK cases they put the kind of content section where it says level 1, level 2, level 3, and with that in, it confuses my VBA because it thinks the level is here where it says, this originally said level 1, not down here, and so I have to remove that from my VBA to work, and I'll know that for next time. Right, anyway, let's get going. So level 1 was simply counting how many times each species appeared in the table. So let's just quickly name our data ranges. So I'm going to move that so it doesn't get picked up here. I changed this to just excitement rather than excitement space factor, so when I do my Control Shift F3 it doesn't end up inserting a random underscore. And then we'll also just name the map. So if I go to the end of the map, which weirdly kind of goes outside the map slightly, but I don't think that ends up making any difference. So we'll call that MP, and that's all the data setup. So first level was simply counting how many rows, how many times each species appeared. So I just did a filter. I know I could probably use COUNTIF, although I'm always a bit reluctant to do that. I don't really know why. So I want to filter. What do I want to filter? I want to filter the locations where the species equals whatever I have in B1. And then I just want to count the number of rows, and because we know each species definitely appears, we won't end up with any weird kind of single row, but actually it's an error. So then level 2 was saying what are the row numbers of those same things. Basically, if we filter again based on the location, we want to get where is it species or genus? Yes, it's still species equals B1. So exactly the same formula as before, but now we want to count the row numbers. I'm going to use regex. I'm going to sum the regex extract from here based on any digit, but it could be multiple digits. We want we actually shouldn't need everyone because it's only one per row, but we'll multiply it by 1 so we get it back to a number and then sum it, and we get 113. That's actually slightly different to what I did on the day. I actually used row num to extract the number and then summed that, but regex just speeds that up a little bit. Level 3, we're now looking at, for each of the rows, so we're given a row number, which genus appears most often. So I am going to import my lambdas now and use row num on this. I'm going to filter the genus, who knows, where the row num of the location equals B1. Close off my brackets and we get 4, and then I'm going to use my most least lambda, but I'm going to put an at the front because I only need the very first result, and that should give me all of those. Good. Level 4. So now level 4, we're given a location and a direction to look, and then we have to find out what the flower is in that location. So I'm going to use the move on map lambda. I'm going to start wherever it is in B1. The arrow's in C1. Don't need to worry about anything else. I think I could just do one step. I get AU43, and then I'm going to XLOOKUP that in the location, returning the species. Is it species? I think it is. No, it's genus. It's genus. We get philodendron, and that's all good. And then we're on to level 5, and this is where the closest on map lambda, which I didn't practice beforehand because I thought I was going to use maze, actually became the one we really needed. So we're basically looking around from a cell, and we can use closest on map to get pretty much all the information we need. So closest on map, we're in our map. Our starting point is in B1. Our steps, we're going 2, but we're not allowed to go diagonal. And then what we can do to speed this up, because we get everything, but we know that all the flowers are represented by the same icon, so I can then actually say my items is this value here, and then I only get where there's actually flowers, and I'm just going to change that to hard coding. I'll go back to the example. And so we had 3, and I need these locations here. So what I did was I used choose cols on this to grab the second column. I could have just done take and take on here, but that's fine. And then I need to look those up in the location and return the excitement factor. And then we just want to sum the excitement factor. And we get 1248 for the example. And I think we get one error here because it turns out there's one where there is no excitement factor because we don't see anything. So the simplest way to deal with that, and luckily it errored out, so I spotted this in the live case, so I can just say if error, then 0, and then we're all good. Okay, let's go on to level 6. So now we get given a path, a starting point, and we carry on the path until we reach the end of the path. So we're going to use move on map again. Our starting point's in B1, our arrow is in C1. Multiple, we get told that the most we could go in any direction was 126. I think originally I missed that and only did 100, but I don't think it actually changed anything. My map is my map. I don't want to stop, and I'll explain why, but what I do want to know is I do want to say what my allowed map is. So I'm going to say stop. My allowed map is basically where the map equals P. Okay, that's the only things, and I want to show the path. And when I do that, I get all of the steps, including where we reach out of bounds. So we start off BX115, going through the whole of BX column until we end the path at BX61, which is what the example told us. So then I'm going to say filter, didn't actually type equal, so let's go filter that where that does not equal out of bounds. So that's going to give me my actual steps, and then I just, for this question, I'm counting the number of rows because that's the number of steps, which in this case is 55. But this working is going to come in handy on level 7, so I'm actually just going to copy the first 2 steps over, because in level 7, and you can ignore this over to the right, that's for the bonus. What do we need to do? We're going to basically monitor the path, and now we need to actually say, well, how many things can we see from each step on the path, which is kind of based on the work from level 5, which I'm just going to build from scratch again, because we have to build this into a lambda that kind of goes over this whole dynamic range. So we'll go closest on map, map starting on this cell, 2 steps, no diagonals. Items are my flower, and that gives me this, and that tells me what I'm looking for is that middle cell. So I'm now going to wrap this in my choose cols second column. But if I drag this down, for some of them I'm going to get errors because I've not locked this or turned it into a hard coding. If I just do that, we get some spill errors. So when we get here, we have multiple. So actually what we needed to do with this original thing was array to text it. So we keep it into a single cell. And if I do that, you'll see now it's a single cell. And now the last thing I want to do is build this into a lambda, where I'm going to go through every row in the dynamic array, because then I can say by row over F4 hash, and I'll change my reference F4 here to my variable row. And that's going to give me a spill error because I've not removed these. So now we've got all of them, spotted a slight issue when there are none. So let's just deal with that. So let's say if error, we want to just return a blank cell. and that resolves that. And now we're going to put these all into a single list with no duplicates. So I've actually got a lambda for this called deduplicate list. I pointed out my delimiter is a comma space because I used array to text, and I want to spill these as an array. So now I get all the unique values, and now we're building up from, I think it was level 4. So we're going to look those up in the location, return the excitement factor, and then I'll just move this out of the way so it doesn't look so messy. And then I'm just going to sum those. And we get 5083, which matches our example. And that's all good. It was a little bit slow, but that's fine. How are we doing for time? We're on 10 minutes. So it took about 3 minutes introducing the cases, so we're good. So in the live case, I think I got to this point after 15. So I had 15 to work on the bonuses, and I was surprisingly slow on some of them. So which plant species is she most excited to see? So it's the highest excitement factor. So I'm going to say at my largest smallest, or where the largest I'm looking at is the excitement. Excitement, and I want to return the species. What's gone wrong there? Did I put an equal sign? There we go. If Graciela saw all the plants in level 1 excluding the example, what would her total excitement factor be? So we need to find the excitement factor of these. So species and excitement. And then we're just going to sum product, that range and our answer range, which gives us 18691. And then using the level 5 visibility rules, what is the cell address of the first plant you see when you enter the park at BH216? So I just did this visually. Don't think there was any programmatic solution. So if we start here, that first one we can't see anything because we're out of range of that. But by the second step, we can now see this one, but we can't see that one. So the answer is BJ125. Paste that in. How many plants are out of visible range? This is the one that really slowed me down. So how many plants are out of the visible range? If we go to flowers, what we need to do is basically sort of do our closest on lambda, closest on map thing. So if I go closest on map, map is MP, starting cell is this, steps 2, 1 diagonal. And what we were looking for is whether there is any Ps. So is there any path visible for this cell? And for the first one, we get a calc which tells us there isn't anything. But if we go down, we start getting some responses. But then some of them are spilling because there's multiple. And it took me ages to kind of debug this because what I was basically wanting to say was, right, if there are any, let's count the rows. And if that is equal to 0, then that would mean there aren't any. But when we go up, we then get to errors for those where it's equal to 0, or it's not equal to 0, but it returns an error. So if I say if error, so if it's an error, it means actually it can't see any paths. So we actually want to return true. Otherwise, we want to return false. And have I got this the right way around? So true is there isn't any paths. I think that's right. And this is where I was getting kind of caught out on the day. I was like, wait, which way around is it? And so if I put that all the way down and then I sum this, I get 207, which is the correct answer. But yeah, you had to think really carefully. Do I want to count them or not count them if they're included, and false and errors and things getting the wrong way around? Right. For bonus 7, she's standing at AU46. She moves in these directions given to us in these arrows. What's the total excitement factor? So it's definitely building on level 7. So I've already taken the arrows there. I've got the cell. So I'm going to regex extract the arrows. So I've got those. And then what I'm going to do is basically combine these two steps together. So if I just start with move on map, but point at this arrow and this cell, we get that. Let's move that out of the way. But I also now need to do my filter as well. So I'm going to say let A equal that, and then we will filter A where A doesn't equal out of bounds. Capitals shouldn't make a difference. Okay, brilliant. So now I've got all the steps in my first direction. So if I just fill that to the right, it will look a bit weird. But instead of looking at the cell above for the address, I'm going to say take from n, whatever that is, n6 hash -1, the last row. In other words, start at the last row of this one. So we start at AU62. And now if I just fill that to the right, we get all of the paths for all of them. Let me just tidy up the there we go. So those are all of the paths. So we go from AU46 to AU62, AU62 AQ, and so on. Then we change our direction. I didn't know to go all the way because I was actually, this kind of should have been a long one, shouldn't it? There we go. Now it actually matches up with the arrow. So my total path, I'm just going to 2col all of this. Actually, I'm going to have to do it manually. Doesn't matter if I overshoot, that's fine. Use 3 to get rid of all the blanks. So now I've got all the actual steps, but there's going to be some duplicates in there. So let's just unique that. Not that it should matter for our final solution. And then I can just copy all my work from before. And this tells me all of the ones where I see stuff. This deduplicates it. This looks up the excitement factor. And this gives me my sum, which is 22383. Should we go back to the case, we paste that there, and we're good. We're on 12:50, and we're at 15 minutes, which minus the time at the start. So that walkthrough is probably about 12 and a half, 13 minutes, which matches up with, I think there was someone, I can't remember who submitted after just under 15 minutes, although I think must have missed a couple of bonuses because didn't get top scores, but it shows you that actually, yeah, definitely I can see how that was possible if you really quickly got to grips with what was being asked. Like I said, a couple of things slowed me down. My if I show you, if I put these back into level 1 and level 2, just an example, and then if I just temporarily delete my level 1 work, so my lambda normally, if I go to level 1, I select one of the cells and I press my keyboard shortcut, and it goes, oh, no example rows found for level 1, because what it's done is it's told to look for the words level 1 in this column, and then look for the words level 2, i.e. the next level, and find everything in between it. But because there is nothing in between these, it goes, I don't know what to do. So as soon as I remove those and go back and do level, use my shortcut, it now works, and when we go back. So that slowed me down probably a couple of minutes, because I was then having to set up some of these data tables manually, although sometimes I just reuse the same one and just change the question numbers. But again, that's slower than using the macro. I actually found question 1 more difficult to interpret than I should have done. It took me a while to realise what it was actually asking, but then after that, I think I was in a good position, as evidenced by the fact that it's the first time I finished and got full marks. So very, very happy with that. Definitely worth doing the practice on gardens, not gardens, on maps beforehand. So yeah, great case, really fun. Maps pretty much all the way through, which is good. Good practice. It's nice not to be put off by that. So yeah, thanks for watching. Going to go watch Hayden's walkthrough now and see what he did differently or better, and hopefully see what I can learn from him. So thanks very much.